Hello, my name is Alice. I'm a graduate intern for Computer Science Corporate and Career Services, and today I'm going to show you how to transform your resume. So, when you start the year, your resume might look something like this. It might be 2 pages, it might have some like icons or images, it might have some columns, it might have too small of a font, it might have too big of gaps between the paragraphs or sections. And these aren't things that make your resume bad, it just makes it a little difficult for it to pass through ATS and for you to secure a job. And so I'm going to show you how you can take your resume from this to this. And so this resume, as you can see, is 1 page, which is the correct format if you are a master's student applying to industry roles. It has an education section followed by skills, work experience, projects, and then leadership and extracurriculars. And so I'm going to take you through each section and show you what to do and what not to do. So for your personal information, which is like your name, your address, phone number, email, what you want to do is make sure that it fits into 2 lines. So as you can see here on the right side, the first one has 5 lines just for the personal information, and this is taking up way too much space. For your resume, every line is precious. You want to make sure that you're saving those for if you need to include new projects, new work experiences, anything like that. So you want to make sure that you never have a line with just like 1 word, or that's really a line that's being wasted. And so what you can do is put everything onto 1 line and separate it by a line, like you can separate it by a dot, anything that gives some kind of demarcation between the elements. As you can see here, I've used a line to separate things. You don't need to include your actual address for your personal information, one, for safety reasons, in case you're putting this up on LinkedIn or something, but also to save space. You also don't need to include labels like email, address, and then like put behind it what the thing is. You can just put it there, because if you're labeling something phone number and then you write your phone number, it's pretty obvious that that is your phone number. Another thing is that if you are submitting your resume over the internet, links are fine, but if you hand it in person and your link is not written out, that person doesn't know what your LinkedIn or your GitHub is. So you can kind of see the difference between the top and the bottom here on the right and how the links are written out. You also want to make sure that your font size isn't way bigger than what's actually used for your text. Your text on your resume should be between 10 and 12-point font. And so you don't want your name or your personal information to be in like 25-point. You want it to still be, for your name at least, it can be a little bigger. So it could be like 14, 16. And for your contact information, it can still be between 10 and 12. Next is your education. So for your education section, you first want to start by listing your current university, which would be NC State in this case, and then listing your undergrad. If you have gone to multiple institutions for your undergrad, you will list them both or all. Like if you're a transfer student, for instance. You also want to make sure that you're writing your degrees in the proper way. So if you are a master of computer science, you're a master of, not masters of or masters in, just master of. Same for bachelor of. You also don't need to list the actual like start and end dates for your degrees. You can just give the expected graduation date. So for example, you don't need to write August 2022 through present, because that doesn't give enough information. You want the employer to know when you're graduating so they know when to hire you. And so it's better if you write something like expected May 2024. That way they know that's when you're free, that's when you can be hired. You also want to make sure you have your GPA on there, but only after you've actually taken courses. So don't add your GPA if you haven't taken any classes yet. Also, if your GPA, like if you're worried about being low, I wouldn't be worried unless it's under like 3.0, because for some ATS, it does like for you to have your GPA on there. And if your GPA isn't on there, it can cause some issues. So if you have like a 3.5 GPA, it's up to you, of course, what you do. We can't like make you do anything, but I would add my GPA on there. You also, for your coursework, you don't need to list every class you've ever taken. Just list the ones that are most relevant or the ones that add something to your resume for that particular job. So here are the examples that I was talking about. And so as you can see here, we have August 22 to present. This is the incorrect way. This is a lot better. Expected May 2024. You want to make sure you have your GPA on there, even if it's not completely perfect. You want to have your coursework, but not everything you've ever taken, just the important things. And then we can see it says Master of Computer Science instead of Masters of. So for your skills section, you want to make sure that it is listed under your education section. So if you put it at the end of your resume, it might be hard for people to find it. They might give up. They might be too lazy to scroll down. And so you just want to make sure there's no confusion and that your skills are right there. You also want to list your skills by the category or the type of skill it is and not the proficiency level. And you want to have skills that you actually know how to do. So you want to make sure that your skills are things you actually can do and that you're putting the skills that are most important to you at the front of your list so that it's not like they're having to read 10 skills before they get to the one that's actually relevant to the job. And then even if you think a skill is irrelevant, still add it on there because you never know what's going to get you the job. So here we can see this person listed as proficient, intermediate, and beginner. This is really confusing for employers because it doesn't organize anything. So like some of these are languages, some of them are databases, some of them are programs, and that's just very confusing to read. But here it's organized languages, databases, and operating systems, computer networks, tools, and frameworks. And that way we know exactly what is what. And you can see that the things that are important or that are notable are kind of like further to the front. Like a lot of the jobs you're going to get as a software developer engineer, they might be asking for you to have experience in C, Java, Python. So you want to make sure that is at the front of your list. So next is work experience. So I've divided it into two sections, your bullets and your format. So for your bullets, make sure you're starting every single bullet point with an action verb. You don't want to start with a word that is vague, like used, worked on, worked with, because technically, I know what you're thinking, worked, used, those are still verbs, but they're not action verbs. Like they're not actually telling me exactly what you did. They're just telling me you were kind of there. So for example, if I say, I worked on career counseling, do you know what I did? No. It's very hard to gauge what I actually did in my job. But if I say that I edited resumes for over 900 students, leading to a job security rate of 98%, that's something that you can actually say, okay, I know exactly what she did. So you want to make sure your bullet points are in that format. You want to talk about what you did, which is your action verb, what you used to do that, and then what was the outcome. So an easy trick to check if your bullet points are starting with an action verb is to put I at the beginning of your bullet point. So let me go to the next slide to show you. For example, on this one, this person said, the patient's previous medical history was stored and based on the urgency of the symptoms. And so instead of saying that, I can change it to an action verb bullet point. But first I need to check, do I have a verb there? Let's put I at the beginning of the sentence. So if I literally place the word I right here, this sentence would read, the patient's previous medical history was stored and based on the urgency of the symptoms. That didn't make sense, did it? It didn't. But if we go over here where I have changed that, so if I go here and look at what I actually did, then I put I in front of this sentence, then it would read, I developed a patient portal using artificial intelligence and Node.js that color codes and stores patient medical history based on the urgency of the symptoms. And so you see how that included the same information here, but it actually gave detail to it, and it started with an action verb. So as you can see with that trick, I was able to check and I saw that, yes, I did do this right because there was an action verb. Now for the format, you want to make sure that your headings are just taking up one line. Like I said earlier, you don't want to be wasting lines on your resume. And speaking of wasting lines, another thing to remember is that if you ever have a word just kind of hanging off here, you want to get that onto the previous line as much as possible. So instead of like worked with a software team on designing an application that detects anomalies in the system functioning for businesses, you could maybe say something like, designed an application using Python, Git, and JavaScript that detects anomalies in system functioning. So as you can see there, you are getting rid of those unnecessary words like in the system or with a software team, like getting rid of those small articles kind of condense the sentence so you don't have this one word just hanging off on its own, because this is a whole line that you're wasting right there. So as I was saying, you want to make sure that you just are keeping everything on one line. This right here, this is 2 lines plus the skills, that's 3 lines you're wasting. But if you put it on one line, you're just using that one line, you've saved yourself 2 lines. You can include those 2 lines later if you want to add an extra project, if you want to add like a community activity you did, anything like that. And now you have that space. And as you can see, it's also even a little bit easier to read, in my opinion, because you're not having to like read this, go to the dates, and you're like, well, what's this? And oh, there's skills too. No. You can just read across software engineer intern, Scorpion Tech, Raleigh, North Carolina, May 2023 through present. And so you want to make sure that, as I was saying about those skills, that they're not just there. So you don't want your skills to just be written out like this because you have a skills section where it is written out. You just want to make sure that those skills are embedded into your bullet points. So don't just write them where they're just like listed, but put them in your bullet point. Like if you used React.js, HTML5, and CSS3, write that in your sentence. And then if you're bolding everything, like if I'm seeing that a lot of stuff is bolded, I don't actually know what's important and what's irrelevant information. But if you just bold a few words, they really stick out. Like I'm seeing agile here because it's one of the few things that is bolded. Now, for projects, it is very similar to work experience. You want to make sure that your projects are reflecting what you actually did, the same way like a job title would reflect what kind of work that you did. So you don't want to have a project heading that says like COVID-19 robot, because that doesn't tell me any information about what kind of thing that is. But if it was based on machine learning, that tells me, okay, this person knows machine learning, and that's really important. You also want to make sure that your projects are starting with action verbs. You don't want to just describe what it does, like the phone sends text. No, I don't want to know what the phone does. I want to know what you did. You created a phone that sends text. So say that. Your bullet point would be something like created phone using blah, blah, blah that helps people communicate through text. And so, like I said, start with that action verb, make it either a short paragraph or bullet points, but don't just describe what the tool is. So here are some examples. This is a description of what the thing does. The bot uses Node.js. But now I'm thinking, did you make the bot? Did someone else make it? Why are you describing this thing? But here I know for sure you made it. Created bot using Node.js. Now I understand that you are the creator of this tool. And as you can see, again, with the titles, focus bot, that tells me pretty much nothing. Web application development helps me understand, okay, this was a web app. And then we have awards, research, and etc. So for awards, research, extracurriculars, anything that might go in this type of category, you first need to think about is this actually adding something to my resume? So it's not necessary to add that you won the award for best high school student if that doesn't add anything to your resume. Like, make sure things are connected to what you're applying for and not just like saying, hey, I got this award. You want to also show that you are interested in the things that you were being awarded for. It's not just another award to you, it's actually something important. So if you won a hackathon, don't just say won a hackathon. Say like you were leading the team. Say what the hackathon was. Like, really give an explanation. This was something you were a part of that mattered to you. It's not just another award that you're listing off to impress people. And so for a lot of awards, if they're related to your work experience, list them under your work experience. If you won an award for best intern at your company, put that in the description of the job in the work experience. For research, if you have research experiences that you were like an RA for, a research assistant, put that in your work experience. Again, it can go there. Now, if you are worried because your RA experience is your most recent job and you don't want people to think that that's all you've done, that's when you can create another section. You could title it research, or like you could leave it in your activity section. For extracurriculars, you want to make sure that you're describing them like projects or work experience. So if you were the president of the gardening club, you don't want to just have like president of gardening club with no explanation of what you did. You want to say like gardening club, president, these dates, this is what I did. Planted crops to give away to community members that were in need of food. Something to tell me what you were doing. Because if you just tell me you're the president of the gardening club and I don't have any background, then I don't really care because I'm not sure what you did in that role. So as you can see here, this just lists like what you won, but I don't know what you were actually doing. It doesn't feel like it was important to you, but here I can see like this was something you did, an engineering international university hackathon, and you led your team to of 5 to place 4th out of 80 teams. Or like with your research experience, here I've listed the research as part of the work experience, not under leadership and extracurriculars, but you can see how it's listed just like a job, and it has those action verbs at the beginning. Also, if you want to include a paper, it is unlikely that they'll click on the link, but if you want to include it, it's not really hurting anybody. So that's everything that I had to show you guys today. I hope you found this helpful. Please email me if you have questions. Please make an appointment with one of us at the Career Services if you would like your resume reviewed or if you have questions. But I hope this was helpful.